Hello, and welcome to video 6. Let's turn to one of the most sensitive and most misunderstood parts of the opioid crisis. This is the mistakes made by federal and state government officials, insurance companies, and doctors in their effort to address what was seen as a prescription drug epidemic, not yet an opioid crisis involving heroin or fentanyl. These errors were the results of sincere attempts to respond quickly to an accelerating national health emergency, but taken together, they reveal how hasty decision making, weak coordination, inadequate feedback mechanisms, and fear driven policy can make a crisis worse rather than better. Like during the crack cocaine epidemic, quick decisions made under political pressure crowded out more careful planning and execution. Similarly, like in the crack cocaine era, recognition of errors made and corrective action has been painfully slow to occur. As evidence of harm mounted from opioid prescription painkillers, policymakers and insurance companies moved to restrict prescribing. The fatal error wasn't in reducing prescribing, it was doing so without a coordinated plan for treatment, monitoring, and continuity of care for patients who are about to lose their prescriptions and their access to their doctor while facing painful opioid withdrawal symptoms on their own. Guidelines on prescribing quickly hardened into rules, and responsibility for managing the consequences was shifted to patients and their families rather than shared with doctors, pharmacists, and other professionals within the health system who could have and should have helped. At the same time, insurance practices ill served patients. Not only did they fail to reduce prescribing carefully, but they also failed to ramp up addiction treatment services or alternatives to managing acute pain when prescriptions were suddenly eliminated. Patients were disconnected from their doctors and pushed into the increasingly lethal black market for opioids. Doctors, meanwhile, were placed in an impossible position. They were expected to manage pain, identify addiction risk, comply with evolving regulations, and avoid legal exposure, often with limited guidance and little or no systemic support. Another error was failing to anticipate how quickly drug markets would adapt. As access narrowed, illicit markets responding by increasing availability first of heroin and then fentanyl. In fact, the Mexican drug cartels ramped up their production of opium and heroin very quickly. Clearly, they were watching what was happening in the US. So these mistakes intensified harm, worsened the opioid crisis, and led opioid-involved overdoses to rise from a few thousand a year in 1990 to more than 80,000 in 2022. In the long history of the United States grappling with drugs, there's never been anything close to this level of fatality, ever. The combination of Purdue Pharma's recklessness and the failure of government authorities and insurance companies to anticipate the consequences of indiscriminately cutting back prescribing without effective pathways into treatment created this man made disaster. It should never happen again. Here's what must change to manage the evolving opioid crisis and to prepare for whatever comes next. First, prescription drug monitoring programs need to be reformed so they function as an early warning and intervention tool, not an enforcement mechanism. They should prioritize preservation of life, continuity of care, and rapid connection to treatment rather than abruptly cutting people off from the medications they've become dependent on. Second, before major federal drug policy shifts are implemented, there must be far more rigorous assessments and discussion of what could go wrong. Too many decisions during the opioid response were made quickly and implemented nationwide without sufficient consideration of real world impacts. Third, federal agencies, especially the Office of National Drug Control Policy, must be funded to conduct either in house or through contracts with the country's top research organizations rapid evaluations of state and local initiatives, not multi year studies, but 90-day intensive research projects to assess the current state of knowledge. That kind of quick assessment is essential to ensure policy adapts to the best available evidence. The goal is not to impede decisive action in a crisis. It's to ensure that urgency doesn't override judgment and that well intentioned reforms don't unintentionally increase harm, as they have far too many times in the past. In the next video, I turn to what was missing from many of these responses and why so many people still haven't received the help they need, even as treatment capacity has expanded in the country. Chapter 5 of the book is the first of 3 book chapters that I've split into 2 videos. In the first video on this chapter, I'll explain why most chronic drug users don't seek treatment. In the second, I'll lay out the practical changes necessary to build treatment and recovery systems that work in the real world. These are important messages. I hope you'll join me for these next 2 critical videos. Thank you.